Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on where you are hailing from. I've seen a lot of companies, not just recently, but always, that are unable to capture their audience's attention due to confusing messaging. Oftentimes, these companies have something in common. They're not incorporating storytelling into their business. Using storytelling in your business can help increase revenue by ensuring that your business's messaging is crystal clear and primed to convert your audience into paying customers. I'm going to teach you how to do just that. You may be wondering, how exactly does the Go narrative approach solve these muddled message problems? And what does storytelling have to do with it? Or why should I even care about storytelling? Well, storytelling is the foundation of all human communication. It shapes how we view the world. It's a vital tool in business, and that businesses should use to build that connection with their customers. And as we'll discuss momentarily, it's your customers who matter most in your brand stories. Our approach simplifies storytelling in business. It allows businesses to see their story from all sides and apply that outside in, all angles thinking in every piece of communication that you craft, not just externally, but internally as well. So with all of the frameworks that you've probably seen with storytelling, if you've ever spent more than 5 minutes looking for it, you've probably seen stuff like this. Am I right? I'm going to teach you how to do storytelling in business without these confusing entertainment-based frameworks. You might be asking yourself, like, who is this presentation for? Who is this for, Matthew? Well, there's really two sets of people that are going to get value out of this. Number one is if you're completely new to storytelling, let alone business storytelling, we've got something for you. And then if you are comfortable with storytelling, maybe even a bit of an expert, and you enjoy storytelling, we're going to show you how to really operationalize that every day in your business so that you can keep telling those consistent stories for impact. Now, like many of you, I actually once thought that storytelling was reserved for movies, books, and theater. And whilst I've always appreciated a good story, my career was actually built through science, technology. I didn't really think storytelling had much to do with those fields at all. However, I did come to learn that storytelling props up everything in business for every industry. Obviously, communications and marketing, but even more than that, internal alignment, in particular for sales and partner alliances as well. If we don't have aligned messaging, if everybody's not telling the same story, we're going to run into problems. What stories are your customers or your partners telling about your business? Have you had any hand in shaping that? Or are you just delegating to them to say whatever they want? My mother was a scientist in a biology focused on virology and zoology, and she taught my sisters and me to ask questions, develop hypotheses, and of course, to test our ideas. We were taught to seek facts, data, and truth. But here's the thing. She was also a poet and an author. My dad brought some similar left brain, right brain to the table, an electrical engineer by training who enjoyed a sales and marketing career spanning over 5 decades in high tech. He actually inadvertently indoctrinated me into the world of technology, Intel specifically, and I grew up surrounded by tales of Silicon Valley. If you haven't read Accidental Empires for a behind-the-scenes look of what was going on during the 80s with the likes of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, it's a really, really fun read. We were soaked in story from a young age. Both my parents read to us voraciously, just as we do to our children now. I still have fond memories of being curled up on the settee with my father and one of my sisters as he read us Lord of the Rings, this actual copy, in fact, of Lord of the Rings, the original 1969 version that was all the books first published together as one. So I took this fascination and its scientific approach, this love of writing, its fascination with technology, and I started a career at Intel's marketing department. And very early days, this was in fact 20 years ago this year. Any Red Dwarf fans will recognize this as Rimmer from Red Dwarf. This was an Intel Counter-Strike gaming event at the Science Museum in London. You can see all of my passions coming together in one place here. Now, in those early days of my career, I thought storytelling was best suited for presentations, events like that gaming event, ad campaigns, and messaging. I didn't really necessarily see it explicitly as being something to use all across the business, but I was using it in my business. Little did I realize, in one early instance, for example, I created a superhero theme for a channel partner campaign at Intel. The fun continued at Microsoft to the point where I was actually invited to come and be chief storyteller for Microsoft Dynamics. Just as I was planning on leaving the company, wow, I thought, it's all official. I was actually going to get paid to be a storyteller. Finishing those 2 science fiction novels can wait. And all of this experience that came after these moments led to me to discover a big business secret. And that journey that revealed that learning for me is a part of my story. And you need to be thinking about that. Your story, your journey. What did you discover? What can you share? Your customers, what are they discovering? What can be learned from that you can share with other potential customers? But here's the thing. Here's the big secret that I'm going to reveal to you right now. It's not about entertainment storytelling. It's about business storytelling. Now, whilst they can be related, and whilst your business stories can and should be entertaining, I'm going to share with you how it's different and why it's different to entertainment-based storytelling. Now, if we go back to those early days at Intel, a friend and mentor of mine, Nick Drew, once encouraged me to find out if somebody else had already invented the wheel so that I didn't have to reinvent it. Great advice, and not surprising coming from a sales guy. But when I started this new role at Microsoft as chief storyteller for Microsoft Dynamics, I did just that. I went to go and see if I could find any wheels that I could apply in the business, pick them up, start rolling them, and apply them to our business. But here's the problem. Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, to name but one of the famous frameworks around storytelling, whilst it kind of looks like a wheel, it's 10, 12, sometimes even a whopping 17 steps. Phrases like rising and falling action, character arc. Too much of a heavy lift for busy professionals. And this is what I was discovering when I went to go and try find a wheel that we could use in our business. So suffice to say, those wheels just weren't rolling, and I ended up playing this story interpreter role for my time in this role. Now, I actually was really excited by the idea of leaving Microsoft and applying what I had learned to multiple businesses, as much fun as I was having at Microsoft. And that was something that was a bit tricky when you've been in the corporate world for a long time, especially when you've got a young family at home. And so I resisted and continued having fun telling stories at Microsoft for a while. And then July 19th, 2015, tragedy struck. I won't go into the details of this, but both of my parents were killed in a car crash, and it became a massive turning point in my and my sister's lives. And it was under the backdrop, against the backdrop of this profound grief, that I actually left Microsoft. What on earth was I thinking? Well, I honored my parents in the best way I knew how, helping others find success in their business with the power of storytelling by tapping into that technology experience, tapping into that creative writing experience, tapping into that scientific experience, and helping the world, helping business people get the most out of their storytelling, because I'd seen the light. And, remember that big misconception that it's for children, movies and books. It's not. The thing is, those are artifacts of what storytelling is. And if some artifacts can be used for pure engagement, if some artifacts can be used for pure entertainment, some artifacts can be used for business engagement. And business is all about value and engaging around that value. Now, when storytelling was initially developing for us as humans, both as a way for us to make sense of the world, right? We want our customers to make sense of us, don't we? And also how to communicate that. The elements of value were things like where the shelter was, where the poisonous berries were, where the lions were. These were all stories we told around the campfire. And the tribes that told these stories around the campfire were the ones that survived. And that was evolution in action, carrying forth those capabilities, because the other tribes who didn't use storytelling died off. Now, when we hear a story, we simulate it in our minds, whether we're sitting around the campfire or the digital campfire or around the conference room table. It helps us create similar real-world experiences that we see demonstrated, right, virtually for the first time in a story. You're in tech. You love showing demos of your products, right? A story is a demo of the experience. I love this quote from Jonathan Gottschall. Fiction is an ancient virtual reality technology that specializes in simulating human problems. You know, my mother's earliest memory, under pain of death, that my grandmother should find out, was my great-grandfather taking her and her sisters down to his smithy. He was a blacksmith, and he helped them get the horseshoe and put it into the flames, get it hot, hit it with a hammer, thrust it into the water, temper it, sparks flew, steam filled the air, and that forging took work. But my great-grandfather was using the anvil, he was using the tongs, and he was able then and the fire and the water, and he was able to focus on the horseshoe and making that horseshoe. And in fact, even being a farrier in the First World War. And that's exactly what I've sought to do with storytelling for action. And that is to create some repeatable tools that you can use, some frameworks that you can use day in, day out to help you stand out from the crowd. And it's really no surprise that this helps us stand out the crowd, because our brains are built on it, our society thrives on it, and it leads me to that big secret that I discovered. And that big secret is, it's all about how to come up with a quick and easy way to increase productivity, increase profitability, accelerate sales pipeline, all by using storytelling, but not entertainment storytelling. And that's the absolute key. You don't have to worry about all of those frameworks. This is about business storytelling. And remember, I just couldn't find the right wheels for the business. And so I had to go and unlock it myself and develop it. So you ready for that framework? I'm excited to share it with you. Okay, so here it is. This was actually our first framework we developed. It's the tip of the iceberg as well for a couple of our other frameworks, but this one will help you go and get better at storytelling. In fact, one of our clients just got a brand new, shiny new job because we coached her through how to use this within the interview process, and she absolutely crushed it. So much so, she was getting multiple job offers from the same company, from the people who were interviewing her. This 3D framework helps you see your story from all angles. It's simple, it's straightforward, and I drew a lot of inspiration from Nike's Just Do It. Not as a framework per se, but those 3 words and how much they packed into those 3 words. And that's what we've done with the 3D framework. Desire, difficulty, denouement. That's it. 3 simple things. And you're going to remember it, and I'll tell you why. There's number 1 is there's something a bit of a grain of sand in there that maybe rubs your brain the wrong way, and that is the word denouement. That's going to help you remember it. Another thing is there's some value in here. There's a fact, there's some data. The number 3, that's also going to help you remember. And also because it's so simple. Desire, difficulty, denouement. We don't need heroes. We don't need rising and falling action. We don't need to talk about the deepest, darkest night or the journey and return. We don't have to talk about any of that stuff. We can talk about the desire of your audience, the things that stand in the way, the difficulties that stand in the way, and then how they untangle that knot. And that's the other aspect of that word. Denouement, French word, means the untangling of the knot. This isn't just they used our product to achieve things. This is what they learned along the way. This is their outcomes. This is the other tools, the approaches, the ISO 27001, whatever it is that they used. And you can use this in everything from preparing for an interview to even creating a web page. Here is an example of a web page that we created for a global financial services firm. And here you can see desire, difficulty, denouement in action, sitting right here at the top of a web page above the fold. You could also use it to craft an entire presentation, or you could even use it to create a video. I'm excited to share with you right now an example of a video that we created for one of our clients. So go ahead and watch this very, very short video and see if you can identify what the desire was, what the difficulty was, and what that denouement, that untangling of the knot. So let's go ahead and have a look.
Handling sensitive credit reporting data is stressful and complicated. Compliance and security issues are not trivial, and I didn't know that, for example, we can't share a credit report with the applicant or any other third party. CRS helps us navigate these waters, and now we move much more confidently.
There we go. Couldn't be much simpler than that, could it? We're talking here about a company. In this case, that was a small business who is seeking to get access to credit reports as a part of their business. But what did we learn about it? It's complicated. It's hard. As a small company, dealing with all the larger credit bureaus is a challenge. And we got a sense for what that was in that tiny video. And then we also discovered how CRS helped, but also as a part of that denouement, what those outcomes were and what they were able to achieve. Wow. What was that? 30 seconds long. Can you see how you're going to be able to apply this in very brief communications or even communications which are more significant? Now, I mentioned tip of the iceberg earlier. The great thing about this framework is it's going to help you cut open each of these areas and have it all spill out. So desire, for example, the reason why we don't need to mention a hero or even your customer or audience is because it's packed in there. To figure out the desire, you have to unpack that. You have to cut it open and take all the pieces out. The same goes for difficulty. That could be the difficulty that is being imposed on them by a market transformation. It could be the challenges getting going, solving the problem. It could be the challenges being imposed by competition. It could be all sorts of challenges. And then how they untangle that. What was the process, the steps they used? What did they learn along the way? How do they feel? What aspirations did they achieve? Now, I did mention that this is one of our frameworks, and I mentioned transformation as well. Now, transformation is a part of our narrative framework. So we have some other frameworks that help you get even more connected to the business. But the thing I wanted to share with you today was just that. Now, when it comes to creating consistent clarity, it really matters, right? So consistency and clarity of your messaging makes it easier to send that traffic that you have to the places that you want with less confusion. The opposite of that, of course, is if you send a vague or muddled message, your audience will stop listening, right? You'll have to work harder, spend more money to get their attention back. And because there's so much noise and competition out there, it can often be difficult for any company to find its voice effectively and get its message across to the audience. Consumers are consistently bombarded with communication from all businesses and the world in general. There's just so much going on, right? And our 3D story framework helps you cut through that. I want to talk a little bit about each of those elements. So let's go ahead and go back a couple of images here so that you can have this as a nice little reference, okay? So when we talk about desire, here's some sort of next click down on the things that you could be thinking about. Do your audience have a sense of purpose that they're pursuing, right? Is this something that's kind of like driven, they're being driven to go and do, a sense of purpose, maybe even something to do with morals or values? We actually have a framework to help you with that, to go even deeper there. But just in terms of desire, what do they want? What are they pursuing? Maybe they've got a pain or an issue that they're seeking to resolve. You've got that thorn in your side and you've got to pull it out, right? That can often be the case. Maybe they have got some midterm to long-term objectives. Now, remember, these aren't necessarily mutually exclusive elements. You could have a sense of purpose that you're pursuing in the midterm and the long term, or you could seek to be solving a pain in the short term, and then the mid to long term be pursuing that sense of purpose or something more altruistic. You can also ask yourself the question, is my audience reacting to something that's happening in the world? For example, a government policy, a regulation, some type of restriction in the ability to do business, such as sanctions. Did something happen to your customer and they're now in a reactive position? That could be caused by something in the market. So you can start to see how all of these things come together, because what we're doing is we're asking the questions, is something impacting our customer, whether it's reputation or it's the profitability of the business. And your character, if you will, should be able to achieve their desire, at least in part, by using your product or service, right? But we're not starting with that. We're starting outside in. So what about that second D? What about that second D of difficulty? So with the second D of difficulty, what we've got here is we've got, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it just be lovely if every time we wanted something in life, we just got it? Well, unfortunately, life doesn't usually work that way, does it? So instead, there's trials, tribulations, conflict, and hardship that each and every one of us experiences. We've all in our own personal story got hardships that we've had to overcome. In stories, we're compelled by that conflict or by those challenges. We're naturally interested in the things that go wrong. You may be asking yourself the question, what did Matthew go through after the loss of his parents? How did that get him to rethink what he was doing? Maybe you hear that, and maybe you've gone through something similar and you see what I'm doing and it inspires you to go and do something similar yourself. You see, that's what happens when we see conflict in a story. Our brains are drawn to it. Conflict is key. That difficulty and overcoming that difficulty is essential in every story. Now, a clearly defined and relatable challenge will help you frame the desire and the desire to achieve more and to navigate around that. It's going to help your customer, your audience, see themselves in that story. Remember what Jonathan Gottschall said about fiction being an ancient virtual reality technology? Well, that's what you're doing for your prospect. You're helping them simulate it. You're helping them visualize it. You're effectively injecting your demo directly into their brain. We all love demos, don't we? So some things to consider as you seek to identify your hero's key difficulties. Some questions such as, is something blocking them from getting to their desire? Is it something literal, maybe physical, but something that could be regulation or something that's just standing in the way? Roadblocks along the journey. What risks and pitfalls are they going to have to navigate? That's another great source of difficulty and of course, of conflict. Maybe there's a specific villain, person, or a company that's in the way. Maybe there's somebody that's behind the reason why this new regulation was put in place, right? Maybe we can draw that out. We can bring that character into the story, and that will help your customer, that will help your audience see and feel that visceral effect and think about how they would feel and react in that situation. Now, we talked a little bit about the external stuff there. What about the internal blockers? What's standing in the way internally? This could be, hey, I just don't have the skills or the talent or the ability myself or my team to achieve this. I can immediately imagine if somebody who's selling learning software, LMS software or something along those lines, where that would be a blocker that could help remove that. But what are those internal issues? Maybe it's politics. Maybe it's not having enough resources. And then, of course, there are the external factors that could be slowing them down or stopping them. Remember, difficulty is everywhere. If you take the time to understand what your customer is struggling with, you'll unlock that critical part of the story that you want to tell. And focus on the understanding of what people want and what is preventing them from getting it. That's going to be immensely valuable. And that conflict, that difficulty is going to get people's attention. And our frameworks can really help you come up with an effective way to communicate that will be heard by detecting that difficulty and catering and shaping your message so that it respects that. Okay, so we talked about the desire, we've talked about the difficulty. It's really important that the denouement is executed effectively. You've all seen the case studies that lead with the company that's trying to sell the product, even though the reason why you're there is you're considering the product, you're on the company's website, the branding's everywhere. And before you know it, you're getting hit over the head with what the company's product is and the benefits and the features and the capabilities, right? That is the last thing I want you to be doing, whether it's in your case studies or it's in the stories that you're telling in your marketing or the pitches you're doing to your boss and your leadership team internally or that job interview that you're going for, right? Storytelling is a great way to communicate information about a product or service, but it has to have those right elements. And that's why we chose the word denouement, right? Because there's so much that it's packed in there, and also it's a bit unique. So you'll remember it. You might not be able to spell it, but I promise you'll be able to remember it. You might not be able to pronounce it. Some folks struggle with that as well, and that's okay. But it's there for a very specific reason. And of course, one of those elements is the untangling of the knot. Now, a good story includes more than just the resolution. So the denouement is more than just that. It's not just resolution. It's not just conclusion, okay? Product, solution, benefit, right? It's not just the solution and the benefit. In fact, problem, solution, benefit. It's not just those two parts. So you can even see, right, in that classic case study model, problem, solution, benefit. Let's see. Problem, very, very small part of what the company is dealing with. And it's often directly related to the specifics about the product and not the bigger mission, vision, what that company, what those people are trying to achieve. And then solution, we're talking about a company solution. Thank you very much. And benefit, well, we've got all these great things and all this stuff happened after that. Okay. That's not enough. We want to draw out more than just those conclusions and those benefits. How did your hero, how did your customer, how did your audience, how did your example in the story approach overcoming the challenges? How did they start to tackle it? Did they have a specific approach? Was there a 1, 2, 3? Did this, then that? What were the results that came out of this, right? So yeah, there's some benefit in there. What were those results? Anytime there's a number or a piece of data, that helps anchor in your customers' minds or your audience's minds what the story is that you're telling them. The head and the heart of storytelling. Just like data on its own is nothing without a story, story on its own with nothing about some data, without some data is also a problem. How did they change or transform because of this? There's no point in telling the story unless they did. All stories are about not just conflict, but the change that happened when that conflict was overcome. And hopefully for the better. Hopefully we're not talking about a tragedy here. What third-party components did they use? Maybe, it's not just about you. When I shaved this morning, it wasn't just the razor. I had some soap. I used shaving oil. There's multiple pieces to it, and those are all from different companies. What did they learn along the journey? Right? If you can help, I heard this great quote recently. I'm trying to remember who said it, but it was, smart people learn from their mistakes. Really smart people learn from other people's mistakes. And that's the beauty of stories, is it helps us learn from other people's mistakes. It helps us learn what they learned. And of course, there's an argument to say that we truly learn something when we experience it, but it's the best proxy for doing it ourselves. Just like a story is the best proxy for experiencing it ourselves. So as you craft your denouement, consider how you can position your product and service as a part of their solution to that difficulty and help them obtain their desired state. Prove that you can help, of course, resolve any of those conflicts, because anybody who can help you resolve a conflict in life is going to be a friend for life. Well, maybe not, but you know what I'm saying. So clear and effective messaging is important, especially when it comes to marketing your business. You can achieve this and build customer trust through storytelling. People are more likely to listen to and be more interested in information about a product or service if it's shared in the form of a story, rather than presenting the audience just with a bunch of facts or product specs. It's why I tell my story as we go through this. It's why I even mention what my family went through, because none of this would have happened if it hadn't been for that, right? And if I just jumped in straight into talking about the speeds and feeds of the 3D framework, I'd have lost your attention early on in this little conversation. So, of course, incorporating storytelling into your marketing is a great way to communicate. Okay, use the 3D framework, and of course, love to chat with you about this. But we also have some resources for you, so I'm super excited to share something with you now. So let's go ahead and have a look at this little one here. Are you ready? Okay, so this 3D story framework and its siblings exist in our Storytelling for Action program. Now, the program includes a book. This is imminently available on Amazon and all good publishers, both in ebook form and in paper book form. And It is a very practical book. If there's anything that you should be taking away from my story today, is a practicality of things, putting things into practice, right? So that's why we're launching the Storytelling for Action kit. And there's a whole bunch of resources in here to help you extract what you need for a story and also make sure that you sequence it. You've got all those tips, all those processes, all those hacks. We even show you how to create a strategic narrative in this. So you can be one of the first people to get access to our Storytelling for Action. You can sign up at the link here, and it's all you need to start applying storytelling in your business without any of that entertainment Hollywood BS. We've got 6 playbooks, a 12-part course covering all the elements of our frameworks and how to apply them, templates that you can use with you and your team, lifetime access to our virtual clinic, and a bonus customer advocacy pack as well. So our mission is to help you harness the storytelling for business. Our mission, in fact, is to help every business person on this planet become a better storyteller. And we love working with tech companies and entrepreneurs because those products are so complicated and there's so many brilliant stories that are just hiding in plain sight to be told that are going to engage people and to get people's attention and help you then sell more. So you can go ahead, sign up at gonarrative.com/SFA. You will be one of the first people to hear about it as it launches. You will all get a bonus as well. And that's our regular weekly newsletter where we do a little story tip every week. And every month we release a new blog with some story guidance and ideas for you. You can see our whole back catalog at gonarrative.com/blog and also up on LinkedIn. So don't forget to sign up so you can be the first to get access to Storytelling for Action. Feel free to reach out, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.